So in this video I'm going to play a genuine chiptune that I created for the BBC Computer for Disc User magazine back in 1987. It is a genuine chiptune and this is the most retro piece of gear I could find to wear. Although if you've seen some of my other videos you may disagree. However, I also thought it would be interesting to explain how this piece was produced. Now, this might be a little bit geeky, but I shall explain it very simply and in no great detail, so that even if you are not a geek, you should be able to follow the process. The point is, the loops we had to jump through, there's probably a programming joke in there somewhere, but the process we had to go through to create these pieces of music was really very archaic and incredibly primitive by today's standards. So you might find it interesting even if you were not around in the 1980s and 90s. As someone might have said, musicians today have never had it so good. Now, if you have absolutely no interest in this and just want to hear the tune, then this is the time point you need to jump to listen to the tune. However, I hope you will stay with me because I've got a few more interesting bits and pieces to share with you, and I think I might even have another bit of a chiptune coming up a little bit later. However, I will leave the time on the screen in case you decide you have had enough nostalgia for one video. Now, this video was prompted by a comment I received on another video, and someone asked if I was the same Ian Waugh who wrote the music to Frostbite. Now, to be honest, I really could not remember. Back in the 80s and early 90s, I wrote several pieces of music for games produced by a company called Tynesoft, principally for the BBC microcomputer. I couldn't remember all the titles, so I thought I would Google it. Now, I don't know if you have ever Googled your own name in any sort of context. It's interesting, but it does open up a rabbit hole which you may not want to go down. However, I Googled this and I found a web page on Wiki. Yes, someone had taken the trouble to put me on Wiki. Now, they don't have a photograph of me, so they obviously hadn't checked my social media. They obviously haven't seen this YouTube channel. And they have a little bit of a description, which unfortunately is not actually 100% correct. But according to this person, I did write the music for Frostbite, so thank you for that. Now, I have no idea how it went. So if anyone out there has a recording, or better still can link to a recording of the Frostbite tune, if you would leave that in the comments, I would be very grateful. Now, just to give this whole thing a little bit of context, the 1980s was the decade of the home computer, certainly in the UK. Now, the BBC Computer, as you might guess from the name, was sort of sponsored or supported by the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation. And the idea was that schools would buy these and parents would buy these and children would learn how to program, which was a brilliant idea. As you might imagine, this guaranteed hundreds of thousands of sales, so there was a lot of competition to get the BBC name stamped on your computer, and the deal was finally won by Acorn Computers. It was released at the back end of 1981 and continued production until 1994, so it had a massive run, a really long lifespan. Now, this was my absolute favourite home computer of the 1980s and early 90s. It was well constructed, it had a good keyboard, it had function keys, it had a good set of I/O input-output ports, so you could connect it to just about anything. And one of the best things about it was its BASIC programming language, BBC Basic as it was known. And BASIC really is about as deep as I got into programming. Now, I was already interested in synthesizers and music. I was also fascinated by computers, even though my fascination began before there were certainly affordable computers. And one of the things which really interested me was the ability, possibly, of a computer to actually compose and generate music, which, of course, now we know is maybe not easy, but it can certainly be done. So I spent a lot of time learning how to program in BASIC and learning how the sound commands on the BBC computer work. So much so that I wrote a book about it, which came out in 1984. I'll say a little bit more about this in a moment if you don't mind. Now this is totally relevant to the chiptune and to the music that I wrote for the BBC computer because, as you probably know, computers love numbers, but sticking a string of numbers into a computer as music was not very friendly, certainly not for humans. So I wrote a little sort of MCL, music composition language for want of a better term, and this allowed you to input notes in a sort of notation format. So notes would be designated by their name and octave number, C4, C sharp, 3, and so on, followed by a duration value. And then I had a little interpreter routine which would look at these notes, convert them into numbers, and the computer would play them. That's actually just about as geeky as it gets. Oh, I will mention a couple of other things. There were four sound channels on the BBC. 3 of them produced a tone and 1 of them produced noise. Now the tones, unlike the SID chip and the Commodore 64 for example, it was a fixed tone. You couldn't alter the tone really, not by filtering. You could through modulation. And the tone it produced is a sort of a square wave. So you were stuck with this tone really, but you could modulate it with the envelope, which actually had 14 stages. And with the envelope you could modulate pitch and amplitude. So you could get a good range of sounds, but there were certain sounds which were really difficult, if not impossible, to reproduce. So all the music I produced for the BBC was written using this MCL that I wrote and under the restrictions, if you like, of the sound chip. So basically you did what you could with the chip, which is to produce a lot of slides and glides and glissando. So it was quite a fun thing to play with and to program. So the book sold relatively well, I think, and the publishers asked me to produce another book for the Commodore 64 and another book for the Amstrad CPC. I bet everyone has forgotten about the Amstrad CPC by now. Anyway, that's essentially it. That's how the music was created. You probably thought it was going to be a bit longer and maybe a bit more geeky, but I hope that's a pleasant surprise. Now, if you are from the 80s and the 90s, or indeed if this has sparked your curiosity, you may know that you can in fact get BBC emulators you can run on your PC. Now, I did this many years ago. It was a bit of a nostalgia trip. I have to say I didn't really get back into the BBC computer, even though I absolutely loved it back in the 80s and 90s. But if you want to do that, then please feel free. And if you want to try some of the programs from the book, then it is still on sale on Amazon. But don't buy it! Have you seen this price? This is totally ridiculous. This book is 30 years old. It's about an obsolete computer. I have absolutely no idea why anyone would want to buy it. Having said that, you can download the book for free from this website. Now, the download is in a PDF format. It's also in an HTML format, which I think is easier to use. I think the PDF format is easier to search, but having said that, there are a lot of chapter headings and subdivisions and so on, so it's pretty easy to find your way around, should you want to do so. So this is a totally free download. I'll leave a link to it in the description, and if you do download it, there is also a disk image in case you decide to run a BBC emulator. I have no idea if this will work or not. If anyone does this, please let me know. But I have to say one thing about this website: it has a lot of books and publications about the BBC computer. However, it says they are public domain. Now, on a technical note, or perhaps a legal note, my book is certainly not in the public domain. In the PDF version, they are at least good enough to acknowledge that fact, and they have left the copyright notice in. Now, I'm not expecting to sell it or make any money out of it, but as musicians, I'm sure you will realise how important copyright is. So it's as much a matter of principle as anything else. Having said that, I would be very happy and absolutely thrilled if anyone wanted to download this and get any pleasure or enjoyment from it. Having said that, I can't speak for copyright holders of any of the other publications. Now, if you like chiptunes, original chiptunes from original old machines, then on my travels I also came across this site, which lists a lot of the tunes created by a lot of different composers. So here is my little list. I really don't know if they've included everything I wrote. Frostbite is not here. But you can click on these titles and play the chiptunes if you want to hear what they sound like. Now, I came across this website a long time ago and someone asked me if I had a favourite tune. So I had to play through them all, and some of them I recognised and some of them I didn't. Some of them were actually conversions from other machines, so the music is not my original music. However, I have to say I probably like Future Shock the best. It's very simple, it's a 4-bar pattern, and it goes like this. And if you have seen some of my other videos, you may realise why I like this. It is in 7/4 time. Not only that, but although the second 2 bars are still in 4/4 time, the melody is not. It's in 4/4, 4/4, 4/4 and 2/4. So this creates a polymeter, which I also love. Now, if you're a musician, you can probably work this out. You can probably count the beats. But if you're not a musician and you try to count the beats, I think you will come unstuck, which adds a little uncertainty and perhaps a little excitement and strangeness perhaps to the program, which I think would contribute to the game. There's also the fact that these 4 bars transpose upwards on every repetition. It's almost shepherd tone-like, although I guess it probably does look back to the beginning at some point. But again, this adds a degree of uncertainty and a sense of moving forward, which I think will also contribute towards the game. I might play a bit more at the end. So anyway, at last, here is the disc user theme, which was created and played on a BBC computer from 1987. So I can only hope that you enjoyed that and found it interesting. At this point, I usually ask if you would like to subscribe to the channel, and I would probably say something like, well, if you've enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it, you might like to consider subscribing to the channel. But the fact is, I am very unlikely to put more chiptunes on this channel. I do have synthesizers in my computer which produce chiptune sounds, so who knows what will happen. But I am very unlikely to put up anything which was actually written and recorded back in the 80s or 90s. But if you like sounds and synthesis and synthesizers and like chatting about them and like electronic music, then perhaps you would like to consider subscribing to the channel and ringing the bell so you get informed of new videos as soon as I release them. Otherwise, if you don't ring the bell, my channel just becomes a piece of flotsam and jetsam floating on the sea of your subscriber base. Is that too much? Yes, it probably is. You can. What's happened to me today? And of course, if you would like to do the thumb, that really helps the channel as well. So as always, I really do appreciate you spending time with me, watching my videos and listening to my music. So for that, thank you very much indeed. I will see you in the next video and just play us out with a little bit more of Future Shock.